In this demonstration, we want to see if the percentage of satisfied patients is the same across all 3 offices in your practice. Because this is a multiple structure and we are comparing proportions, chi-square will be the tool that we use. The file we'll use is patient data, and we set our alternative hypothesis just like we would for any test in a multiple structure. At least one of these groups is different. The null hypothesis will be that the percentage of patient satisfaction is the same at Main Street, Mall Park, and the South Avenue offices. Let's open our file and get started. Chi-square will compare the percentage of satisfaction scores across all 3 of our offices. Therefore, we need to be able to take column I, which is overall satisfaction, and somehow turn that continuous data into discrete data. That's what column P does. If you answered a 4 or a 5 on our survey, that's what's marked as satisfied in column P. A 1 through a 3 is marked as not satisfied. So this study will focus on column P and comparing that across all offices, which is column D. There are 2 ways to conduct a chi-square analysis. One is simply going to Stat Tools and conduct a chi-square test. We'll do that first. We'll select that, hit Entire Table Next. We'll scroll down and we'll select Sat Discrete as X1 and we'll select Office as X2. And when you click OK, you immediately get this table of results. Now, I want to show you a second way that you could get to this table of results, and that is through using the Easy Pivot function. So either by hitting F4 or clicking on patient data, let's go back to the first worksheet. What we need is a count of all of the satisfieds and not satisfieds by office. In other words, building a little table. That is easy to do in Sigma Excel. We'll go to Graphical Tools, Easy Pivot, Entire Table Next, and we'll select, just like we did before, Sat Discrete as X1, and select Office as X2. Uncheck Create Pivot Charts. And when you hit OK, it creates this table for you. Now, all we have to do is select this table, and now we can go back to Sigma Excel, Stat Tools, chi-square test 2-way table data. We now have the counts summarized. While chi-square compares the proportions across offices, the software really just wants the counts. It will do all of the heavy lifting in converting that to proportions for you. So we select the 2-way table data. Notice that it's picked up the entire table now. We don't want that first row. So where it says select this, we're going to click on A2 and come down to D4. And that will be our table. When we click Next, notice that we get the exact same analysis that we did previously. I'll tab back and forth, and you can see that it is the exact same set of numbers. We'll stick with this one. It doesn't matter which table we use. The first thing we notice, as in any analysis, is the p-value. The p-value is low. That tells us to reject the null and that at least one of these groups is different from the other. Now we look up at the table, and the table is trying to tell us in a very cryptic way a story. The observed counts table is really a recreation of your Easy Pivot table. It is simply a summary of the counts that we actually observed for the satisfied and not satisfied people in each of the offices. That's what actually happened in your sample of data. Through a technique called prorating, the expected counts table gives you what we would expect to see in each of the offices if the null hypothesis were actually true and each office performed at the same level. You might ask, why are the numbers different? That's because the sample size is different in each office. The standard residuals table is something that we will explain when you do your exercise on the chi-square. But for right now, let's see what this is telling us. It is saying that for the Main Street office, we expect to see 20 to 21 satisfied people. In actuality, we're only seeing 16 satisfied people. For the Main Street office, we would expect to see 10 dissatisfied people. We're seeing 15. So in other words, the Main Street office has worse than anticipated performance when it comes to percentage of customer satisfaction. Let's look at the Mall Park office. We expect to see 18 satisfied people. In reality, we are only seeing 14. We expect 8 to 9 dissatisfied people. We are seeing 13. So both Main Street and Mall Park have worse than anticipated performance. Finally, for South Avenue, we expect to see 28 satisfied people and 13 to 14 dissatisfied. In actuality, we are seeing 37 satisfied people and 5 dissatisfied people. South Avenue gets a little happy face next to it. This is better than anticipated performance. So all in all, the p-value tells us to reject the null. There indeed is a difference in this data. They are not all performing the same, and it's telling us in its own cryptic way that South Avenue has higher percentage patient satisfaction than the other two offices, better than anticipated performance.